And that message is when a Canadian is wrongfully detained overseas, the Prime Minister, whoever that might be, must use the full power of their office to intervene, to free that wrongfully detained Canadian, and to bring them home. And for many of us, we know those names. Brian, can you check that sound, please? Among those names that we have gathered here before over the last 20 years are Meher Arar, Abdullah Al-Malki, Ahmed Abu Amati, Muyad Nuruddin, Abu Sufyan Abdel Razak Benamar, Benata, Bashir Makhdal, Hussein Jalil. The list goes on and on and on. And today we are here with a gathering momentum of voices to call on Prime Minister Trudeau, much like he did 2 years ago when he called on Prime Minister Harper to bring Mohamed Fahmy home from Egypt. At that time, Trudeau said Mr. Harper should use the full force of his office to bring Mr. Fahmy home. Today, we are here to say it is now Mr. Trudeau's turn to clean up the dirty business of his predecessor, to speak out and to use the full force and power of his office to bring Hassan Diab home. For those of you who are here with the media, tonight at 5 o'clock in the Wellington Building in room 330, MP Don Davies will be hosting a special session for media, for members of Parliament and for senators. You will hear more details about this case from Donald Bain, Mr. Diab's Canadian lawyer, and you will also watch a film called Rubber Stamped, the Hassan Diab story. I'd like to introduce someone who's been a very strong supporter of Mr. Diab now, MP Don Davies. Don, please step forward and speak very close to the mic.
Thank you very much. First, I want to acknowledge the unceded territory of the Indigenous people of the Ottawa Valley, on whose land and by whose grace we gather here today. I also want to thank each and every one of you who have taken time out of your lives to be here and advocate for something that I think is one of the most fundamental concepts of the Canadian culture, society, and history, and that's a matter of fundamental justice. I want to start by speaking a little bit about what I do not know. I do not know Hassan Diab. I have never met him, nor his family. I do not know who was responsible for the bombing in Paris in 1980, that tragic and terrible crime where 4 people lost their life and dozens more were injured. But I'll tell you what I do know. I know that Hassan Diab is a man who has passionately denied any involvement whatsoever in that crime, who strongly appears to be a victim of mistaken identity, who was very likely not even present in France at the time the crime was committed, who has no history of violence or anti-Semitism whatsoever. I know that Hassan Diab is a Canadian citizen, a respected academic, a husband and father, and an upstanding member of our community. I know that Hassan Diab is exceptionally well educated, was a professor here in Ottawa when he was arrested in 2009, some 19 years after that crime was committed. I know that Hassan Diab is a scholar whom his colleagues have expressed great shock and doubt that he could have had anything whatsoever to do with that crime, and who attest to his excellent character. I know that Hassan Diab is a man who was subjected to extremely weak Canadian extradition laws. The presiding judge called the evidence against him weak, expressed serious doubt that he would be committed to trial or convicted were those charges to be laid in Canada, and expressed regret that he was unable to grant Hassan Diab bail, which he would have otherwise done. I know that Hassan Diab is a Canadian who was extradited to France by a Harper-era justice minister and conservative government that continually interjected ideological and partisan bias into decisions of justice. I know that the crime for which Hassan Diab is charged is a highly politically charged one in France, made even more political by subsequent political and terrorist attacks in France. In fact, the laws at issue in this case were crafted in times of panic, political pressure, and indeed public pandering. I know that the evidence presented against Hassan Diab has been roundly and repeatedly demonstrated to be seriously flawed and unreliable. It has been called demonstrably false, confusing and incomprehensible, problematic and convoluted, and filled with suspect conclusions. Moreover, the case against him has been changed by the prosecution on a number of occasions, usually after the fundamental premises have been proved by the defense to be false or totally unreliable or wrong. I also know that Hassan Diab is a product, his case against him is the product of questionable intelligence, which is highly unreliable. And finally, I know that Hassan Diab is a Canadian citizen who has been ordered released on bail 6 times by French judges, only to have those decisions overturned in what I believe are overtly political decisions. I want to just briefly mention Canada's weak extradition system, which I think is in serious need of repair and for which I think Hassan Diab is paying an unacceptable price. Our extradition system appears to prioritize foreign relations above Canadians' rights to a fair trial, acceptable standards of evidence, and perhaps even the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Constitutional law expert and author of a book on extradition, Gary Botting, calls the Canadian process the most unfair one in Canada. Of all the legal processes, that's what he described the extradition process to be. In other words, if the case would not meet Canadian standards for proceeding to trial, why would it be allowed to be the basis for uprooting this man and traumatizing his family? So today, I call on the Canadian government to immediately instruct its diplomats to convey to French authorities the need to comply with the 6 separate French court's orders to release Hassan Diab on bail. I call on the Canadian government to press the French authorities to either schedule a trial forthwith and either present the full evidence against Hassan Diab and allow him to make full answer, or dismiss the charges against him immediately for want of prosecution. I point out that Hassan has been in jail in France going on 3 years as an innocent man waiting to face the charges against him. And last, I call on the Canadian government to give Hassan Diab the full consular support of the Canadian government to ensure his fair and swift access to justice in France, which I have no doubt will result in speedy dismissal of these charges and a return of Hassan Diab back to Canada, his family and his life as he's entitled. I want to end by, saying once again what has already been said about what Prime Minister Trudeau said when he was in opposition about Stephen Harper, when Stephen Harper was lagging on the unjust case of Mohamed Fahmy in 2015. In 2015, Mr. Trudeau told Mr. Harper that Canada has an obligation to use the full force of the Prime Minister's office to help Canadian citizens when they are unjustly imprisoned abroad. His inaction must end today, end quote. My friends, my sisters and brothers, we ask no more and no less for Hassan Diab today. Thank you very much. Thank you for being here, and we won't stop working until Hassan Diab receives justice. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's Don Davies. And again, Don Davies will be hosting a special session tonight of MPs, senators, and the media, the Wellington Building, room 330. If you can make it there, you will find out more details and speak to one of Canada's top litigators, Don Bain, who has been with Hassan Diab for years now, working tirelessly on his behalf. On the May the 5th, a letter was dropped off personally hand-delivered to this building an open letter from the Hassan Diab Support Committee asking for Mr. Trudeau to urgently meet with Rania, who is here today, as well as other members of this support committee. He also received a letter from the former Secretary General of Amnesty International, Roger Clark. Roger Clark, no stranger to human rights abuses when he sees them, writes, "I have rarely seen a case that so glaringly calls out for the intervention of the Canadian government. We firmly believe that a meeting with key members of Dr. Diab's support group would not only clarify any questions you might have, but also lead to the development of a multi-pronged strategy to not only win Dr. Diab bail, but also bring him home where he belongs." Before our next speaker, I want to do a quick shout out to somebody for doing that. When Hassan was released on very strict house arrest bail conditions, someone who also lived under those restrictive bail conditions and had to pay $2,000 a month to have Hassan live in that house arrest is Rania.
I would like to thank you very much for being here today. I also would like to thank Don Bain, Hassan's lawyer, and Hassan's support committee, who work with amazing dedication, energy, and hope. I also would like to thank very much NDP MP Don Davis for speaking at the Vigil, as well as for hosting the event this afternoon. I always like to read some of Hassan's words because since he was extradited, he's rarely seen or heard. He spends his days swinging between prayer and despair, alone over 20 hours per day in a tiny cell and thousands of miles away from his family and home. And this is what he says in his most recent letter. "Another tough night with little time to sleep. It's because of the latest shock. I stayed in cell all morning repeating or cloning other days. They are same days with a new sorrow. I didn't call you or the children again. It's hurtful when I think of them. I feel I lost them for good, or they lost me perhaps. Finally, I gathered my strength, and with enough emotional control, I was able to phone you. I felt sorry for the ordeal I put you and everyone else in. I wanted to calm your anxiety so that you know I'm still alive at least. I started reorganizing my put-away stuff to unpack as if I'm staying here for good. Hassan did not fall from the sky into a French prison. The Canadian government sent him there. They extradited him, being fully aware that a Canadian extradition judge described the evidence against him as very problematic and suspect. The Canadian government extradited him with full knowledge that there is forensic evidence that exonerates him. The Canadian government is still not helping Hassan, even though they know that the French investigative judges said that there is consistent evidence that Hassan is innocent and that he was ordered released 6 times in 1 year. The Canadian government... Shame! The Canadian government has a moral obligation to intervene in Hassan's case, and so far they have not. If I may ask each one of you to call your MPs, the Ministers of Justice, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and the Prime Minister today and every day, so that they take the plight of Hassan seriously and get him out of jail and back to his family and his home. Thank you.
Thank you, Rania. It's my understanding that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is a visual learner. So I'd like you all to put up your hands because we're going to do a little bit of visual learning for the Prime Minister. The fingerprints of Hassan Diab do not match the fingerprints of the suspect. The palm prints of Hassan Diab do not match the palm prints of the suspect. The physical description, a little bit of yoga here, the physical description of the suspect does not match Hassan Diab's. The handwriting of the suspect does not match Hassan Diab's. Are we getting there, Mr. Prime Minister? In 1980, at the time of the bombing, Hassan Diab was in Lebanon as confirmed by the investigative judges in France. I think it's time that they open this door to Rania for a meeting. We're going to get one right now. We got our date books, Rania. Let's see if we can get a meeting. So we're coming up to the Prime Minister. Can you put that pen right there? So we're just putting the call in the Prime Minister. Hi, we're here to follow up on an urgent matter regarding a Canadian who was wrongfully detained overseas. His name is Hassan Diab. Your office received a communication on May the 5th, and I'm here with... Well, can you send somebody out? Because the spouse of that gentleman, Rania, is here today. Rania, can you just identify yourself?
My name is Rania Tfaili. I'm the partner of Hassan Diab, and we would like to set an appointment with the Prime Minister to see that, he's acting to bring Hassan back home.
We're asking that you send a representative of the PMO out here with his date book, and we will synchronize our date book so we can get this urgent meeting underway. This is a man who has been ordered released for bail 6 times, and those bail orders have been overturned by the French Court of Appeal. Surely this is a case that calls for the intervention of the Prime Minister. So can you please ask, we'll be out here for another 25 minutes or so we're asking you to send a representative of the staff out to meet with us. Yes? Well, so far there's no response. We will try again. There's got to be somebody up there who is standing up for justice. So, and they've hung up on us. So we'll try again a little bit later in the rally. Right now, I'd like to introduce Jo Wood, who's a tireless social justice campaigner here in Ottawa, and she's going to read a letter that we received from Mohamed Fahmy. And it was Mr. Fahmy who was being detained in Egypt in 2015 when Mr. Trudeau was outraged and shocked that then Prime Minister Harper was not intervening on Mr. Fahmy's behalf. Mr. Fahmy has written a letter to be read out today.
Case that he is an innocent man and a victim of judicial incompetence.
I'm up after her.
According to the French prosecutor, evidence against him is based on secret intelligence, an all too familiar term applied in French law and in certain countries that was used to wrongly incriminate my colleagues and myself in Egypt for more than 400 days. During my career as a journalist, I have come across many cases where such intelligence is usually obtained under torture or fabricated through security apparatuses to serve a political narrative. Diab is a scapegoat and could not be in 2 places at the same time, since he was in Lebanon in his late 20s at the time of the Paris bombing. The fingerprint on the window of the car used by the assailants did not match his prints, and handwriting associated with the suspects does not definitively match his own. Canadian lawyers see no legal basis for his detention, and French anti-terrorism judges have ordered his release numerous times this year. Yet the University of Ottawa professor remains behind bars. Prime Minister Justice Trudeau should intervene at the highest level in France to end the sheer injustice and bring Mr. Diab back home to his wife and children before it's too late. Warmest regards, Mohamed Ferry.
Among the growing number of parliamentary voices calling for Justin Trudeau to intervene in this case is the leader of the Green Party of Canada, Elizabeth May. Thank you for being here, Elizabeth.
Thank you. As pleased as I am to be here today with all of you, I wish that we didn't have to be here. I met with Professor Diab before his extradition to France. I urged the government of the day to prevent his extradition because the evidence on which he was being extradited appeared even then to be flimsy. It is, if flimsy evidence can solidify as flimsy, that's what happened since he was taken and imprisoned in France. I hope that Prime Minister Trudeau will call on our ambassador to France, Lawrence Cannon, who is soon to be departing as our ambassador to France, but we need to move quickly. We need to ask for his release to return to Canada. The evidence against him is not substantive or persuasive. He is a professor here in Ottawa, and he should be here with his family in Ottawa. So I thank you for being here today to work for his release from prison in France. I appreciate it enormously that there is this gathering today on the steps of the Prime Minister's office to ask the Prime Minister of Canada, the Right Honourable Justin Trudeau, to step up and help Professor Hassan Diab come home to Canada. C'est vraiment important pour tout le monde d'être ici. Nous sommes ensemble pour un seul message, un message clair que M. Trudeau doit agir pour le cas de M. Professeur Hassan Diab parce qu'il est quelqu'un innocent emprisonné en France. S'il vous plaît, immédiatement, agir pour sa liberté. Merci beaucoup.
Merci. Something Elizabeth talked about kind of struck me just now, and it seems to me in the parliamentary system the term right honourable is something that should be earned, not given. And I know that Elizabeth has earned that title through her work for justice, and maybe Mr. Trudeau can earn a few stripes towards being right and honourable by intervening in this case. Someone who knows all too well what it's like to spend every waking moment of the day and every painful hour of the night thinking about their loved one in an overseas jail is here today as well. Please welcome Monia Mazik.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, everybody here. Dear supporter, dear friends, dear activists, today I stand up here in front of the Prime Minister's office in solidarity with Hassan Diab, a sociology professor and Canadian citizen who has been in prison in France for 30 months, away from his wife, away from his 2 young children. I stand up in solidarity with Rania Tfaili, the academic, the single mother, who has been in the middle of this turmoil with her partner Hassan Diab since he was arrested in 2008 by the RCMP to be extradited to France. I stand up in solidarity with Jana, who is 4 years old and misses her dad tremendously. The last time I saw her, she was snuggled in the baby carrier held by her dad. Today, she runs and goes to school where her dad is in prison. I stand up in solidarity with toddler Jihad, who has been separated even before he was born from his dad, when Hassan Diab was taken in the middle of the night on November 14, 2014, to be extradited to France without even saying goodbye to Rania, to Jana, or a little hug to Rania's tummy with Jihad inside it. I stand up very concerned about the fate of Hassan Diab, left to his own in France with no political protection from our Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. I am very concerned on how the French judge ordered Hassan Diab's release for 6 times, and on each time the French prosecutor appeals the decision and keep Hassan Diab in prison, not because there is any new information or any new evidence to incriminate him, but just because of the tense and heavy political climate in France regarding Islam, regarding Muslim and terrorism, because of his place of birth, because of his religion, because of his culture, Hassan Diab found himself today caught in this climate. He is another collateral damage of the ongoing war on terror that has no face, no place, and no end. Today I stand up to urge Prime Minister Trudeau to call his new elected French counterpart, not Mr. Cannon, President Emmanuel Macron, and ask him that Rania, Jana, and Jad need to see Hassan back. That Hassan's friend, colleague, and supporters wants him to be back to Ottawa. That many activists, politicians, legal scholars, activists spoke on his behalf. That many Canadian citizens are demanding today that Hassan to be back. That the legal system proved over and over and over that Hassan is not a terrorist. That Hassan Diab deserves justice. He deserves it today. Thank you.
Thank you, Monia. Just in terms of our schedule today, we have a few more speakers, including a statement from Senator Kim Pate, who has joined the growing momentum of support for Hassan Diab, which will be read shortly. After those statements and a couple of songs from the Grammy-nominated Raging Grannies, in the meantime, we're going to try and knock on that door once more, because I think if Monia comes up maybe with Rania, we're going to try again. And while we're doing that, we're going to pass out these tulips. And if you can have a brief message to Trudeau, because we'll go around the side of the building and deliver these messages. Bob, can you start it? Write a brief message to Trudeau about bringing Hassan home. And I'm going to ask if Monia is still here to come back up to the stage. And maybe if Monia dials, the Prime Minister, we'll get an answer. Come on up, Monia. And Rania, we're going to come up again, see what happens here. Monia has been here so many times seeking justice. Can you call on the button, Monia? There we go.
Venir nous parler concernant le cas de M. Hassan Diab. Hello?
They hung up.
Hello? Is someone there? Hello?
They've hung up. The light's out. The Prime Minister's office has just hung up on one of the most respected human rights campaigners on the planet, and also one of the best writers on the planet, Monia Mazig. I certainly hope this is not a sign of the attitude inside the Prime Minister's office. We will try once more, but in the meantime I'm going to invite Gail up here, and Gail is going to read a letter that we just received from Senator Kim Pate, who is currently investigating the conditions of detention for many of the wrongfully detained here in Canada on Turtle Island. Gail.
This is from her office, and she's a senator for Ontario. In case you didn't know, she's a senator for Ontario. I'm very sorry that I cannot be with you at this important gathering on the unceded territory of the Algonquin peoples, but I am currently on a fact-finding mission with the Senate Standing Committee on Human Rights for the prison study to examine human rights violations in Canadian prisons. As many of you know, I have spent the last 35 years working in and around the legal and penal systems of Canada, advocating on behalf of some of the most marginalized, victimized, criminalized, and institutionalized in our country. I've had the opportunity to draw upon the experiences of many other countries during my career. It has always been my hope that it would be Canada that would set the bar high, that it would be Canada that would be a leader on the world stage when it came to the criminal justice issues. But we have a lot of work to do if we want to get there. Quite fittingly, this is why I had the opportunity to meet with Rania Donald and Hassan's many supporters. I was struck at the lack of adequate support that this Canadian citizen and his family received from the Government of Canada for a crime that there is little to no evidence that he committed. It rings strangely and devastatingly close to the events surrounding the case of another prominent and ultimately wrongly accused Canadian, Mr. Maher Arar. I spoke in honor of International Human Rights Day in the Senate chamber this past December. This year, Human Rights Day campaign is Stand Up for Someone's Rights Today. It underscores the Declaration's fundamental proposition that each one of us, everywhere and at all times, is entitled to the full range of human rights, and it is everyone's responsibility to take a stand and to defend fundamental human rights of those at risk of discrimination and violence. By so doing, we reaffirm our humanity. This is why when our government does nothing to support its own citizens, we must come together and support due process for those marginalized by sex, race, or disability. And we are doing that here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. That's Senator Kim Pate. Again, there will be a meeting of MPs and senators tonight in the Wellington building. Media is welcome to attend. You can meet the lawyer for Hassan Diab here in Canada, a man named Don Bain, and you will also see an award-winning filmmaker, Amar Waller's film, Rubber Stamp, the Hassan Diab story. We have two more speakers before we head around to the back to deliver all those tulips and hearts for Hassan. Our next speaker is Tim McSorley, who's the National Coordinator of the International Civil Liberties Monitoring Group, and that is an office that has dealt with far too many cases of wrongfully detained individuals, both overseas and here on Turtle Island.
Thanks, Matthew. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. I'm really proud to be here on behalf of the ICLMG. We have 40 members across Canada, 40 organizations who are here lending their voices to call for Hassan Diab to be released from prison and returned home to his family, to his friends here in Ottawa. It's a happy day to see so many people here, but it's shameful. It's shameful that twice the Prime Minister's office has hung up on us today, refused to speak to Monia, refused to speak to Rania, and refused to set a meeting to discuss and speak out and make sure that Hassan Diab is brought home. So we need to speak out. We need to keep going after today. I'm glad we'll be bringing the letters, but also hopefully we'll all be able to send messages to our MPs, to the Prime Minister's office, to our senators, to make sure that the pressure stays on and that Hassan Diab is allowed to come home as soon as possible. It's also important to note that the case of Hassan Diab falls within a broader context where Canada has continued to allow the use of intelligence gathered under such cases where we don't know if it's obtained under torture, we don't know where it comes from. It was used in his extradition. It's still allowed to be used in other cases in Canada, and we need to call on the Canadian government to ensure that such intelligence cannot be used in these cases. They cannot be used to imprison people like Hassan Diab. In the cases of other Canadians who have been sent in prison, have been kept under security certificates in Canada. That needs to stop today, and until that stops, cases like Hassan Diab's will continue. We also need to keep in mind that Canada's actions on the international stage allow for such prosecutions like we're seeing in France to continue. Canada sets an example. People say that they look to Canada for their human rights records. The fact that Hassan Diab was allowed to be extradited to France in the first place is shameful. We need action to change the extradition system. We need action to ensure that the Canadian government won't allow that to happen and will speak out forcefully when cases like that do happen to Canadians here and Canadians abroad. So I want to thank everyone for coming out today and thank all the speakers, and again say we're here in support of Rania, of Hassan, and to make sure that Hassan can come home as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Colin little steward is going around the crowd, please pick up one of these if you don't have one already. These are links to a parliamentary petition which will be tabled in Parliament in July, and it was sponsored by Don Davies as well. We have two final speakers. One of them is a statement from the head or the Vice President of the CLC, Larry Russo. But first, Francis Deverell from Canadian Unitarians for Social Justice, another organization behind Hassan Diab.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. What a fantastic crowd today supporting Hassan Diab. I give thanks for this opportunity to speak with you on unceded Algonquin territory and in front of the halls of power in our country. I come here as a past president of Canadian Unitarians for Social Justice and as a Unitarian minister. I speak for our 7 principles, which include the inherent worth and dignity of every person, justice, equity, and compassion, the free and responsible search for truth and meaning, and the use of the democratic process in our society, 4 of our 7 principles. I cannot think of a single case that violates more strongly all of these principles. For me, it is a complete outrage, a travesty of justice that a person like Hassan Diab, a full citizen of this liberal democracy that purports to live by the rule of law, can be picked up and held without charge for more than 8 years. The evidence against him has been demonstrated over and over to be flimsy to non-existent. Judges in both Canada and the United States have said it will not stand up in any honest court of law. By what rightful procedure is he held in a small cell for 22 hours a day, allowed only 2 hours to read and exercise? Where is the worth and dignity in that? Where is the justice, equity, and compassion? Is this an act of blatant Islamophobia or racism? Or is it simply an act of political justification for someone else? Where are the rights of a Canadian citizen? If they can treat Hassan Diab this way, they can treat any one of us the same way. What gives the government the right to charge a citizen $2,000 a month to be incarcerated in his home with an ankle bracelet for years and years without any charge or trial? Why was he extradited on such meager, trumped-up evidence? And why is our Prime Minister doing nothing after France has had 2.5 years to interrogate him, and 6 specialized anti-terrorist investigative judges have recommended his release? Both countries have had every opportunity to investigate, interrogate, and search for the truth. The truth is that Hassan Diab is innocent. Yes. There is no evidence against him. And there is evidence that he was not in France during that bombing. The truth is that either the French government made a mistake or has deliberately chosen Hassan to be a scapegoat for someone else. And the Canadian government has cooperated. That's the truth. It is time to bring him home and give him back his freedom. Prime Minister Trudeau, there is no shame in making a mistake. This one didn't even happen on your watch. But the present injustices Hassan is facing are on your watch. Don't compound the mistake by leaving Hassan in a jail cell in France till they break his spirit. We are holding you in prayer that you may find the wisdom to negotiate through all the turmoil in France and find a way to bring Hassan home. We rely on you to stand up for the truth and for the rights of Canadian citizens abroad. And as a man of compassion, we rely on you to do the right thing for Hassan and Jana and Jad and Rania. Bring him home.
Thank you, Francis. I'm going to ask the Raging Grannies to come to the stage now, and they're going to sing, and then we're going to go around and deliver a lot of these notes. So if you haven't already deposited your tulip for Hassan, please do so. We're going to pass this envelope around. I'm just going to put this out here. If you could just pass that around. Thank you. And before the grannies sing, one of the charter grannies, Rhea Hainan, who has been a tireless campaigner for Hassan Diab, is going to read a brief statement from the Executive Vice President of the Canadian Labour Congress, Larry Rousseau. Rhea.
Larry states, a Canadian citizen has been wronged. While Canada marks its 150th birthday by celebrating our Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms and boasting about our respect for human rights, our government appears to be ignoring the rights of Hassan Diab. Hassan Diab has as much right to due process as any other Canadian. But any process that involves information that may have been obtained under torture is not and will never be due process. I call, and we all call, on Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to do the right thing. The Canadian ambassador in Paris must do everything in his power, and with the full support of the Canadian government, to ensure that Hassan Diab is allowed to return to his family here in Canada. Canada's unions will not stand by idly and witness this injustice. Due process is the foundation of our principles of legal as well as civil and social justice. Prime Minister, we call upon you to do the right thing and do it now.
Wouldn't it be nifty if for Canada's 150 Hassan came home? There'd be great elation at our nation's celebration if Hassan came home. When his family sees him drop through the door, it will please them Hassan once more. Would the voice of 50 if for Canada's 150 Hassan came home? With no evidence of crimes, he's jailed tonight, bailed 6 times for sounds, not home. Mr. Trudeau, please speak out, use your seat and I should out. Hassan home. At our big birthday bash on Canada Day, we shout and pray, and here's what we'll say. Isn't it so nifty after Canada's 150? Hassan came home. Yeah! Hassan came home.
All right, this one will be quite easy because it's a tune everybody knows, and I hope you join in the refrain, okay?
Dr. Diab over the ocean. Dr. Diab lies over the sea. He came on his unpunished prison. He made so accused wrongfully. Bring back, bring back, bring back, are we, bring back, Hassan deserves to be free. 4 years have gone on forever. Evidence experts agree. Does not support Diab's involvement in criminal activity. Bring back, bring back Diab, are we, bring back, Hassan deserves to be free. Evidence was sourced from secret, fingerprint in the palm of a hand. When experts compared them with Hassan, Diab just wasn't their man. Bring back, Diab, are we, bring back, Hassan deserves to be free. Judges have ordered dismissal and called for Hassan's release. The court of Compute washes justice to serve the tricolor Khalid. Bring back, Diab, are we, bring back, Hassan deserves to be free. When alien is called on their PM to strongly urge Diab's release, because the mantle of justice should fall on us all equally. Bring back, Diab, are we, bring back, Hassan deserves to be free.
Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to try another entrance and see if Rania can get her meeting with the Prime Minister. We have a banner here. We're going to ask you to line up behind the France has the wrong guy banner. And let's head around to the other side of the building. We're also going to deliver our messages of support and love for Hassan Diab.
Tim, glad to see you. Good to see you too.
See you in a couple of weeks in Montreal.
Oh, perfect, great.
Bob Stevenson.
Oh, great, Bob. I'm glad you'll be there.
We're waiting for the group.
Still here.
Excellent speech, Tim.
Thank you.
Such a frustration.
It is, yeah. Let's see if we can get a good shot here.
Rania, we're going to try one more here. Send out your digest every week.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Matthew's right in there.
Yeah.
Good, good, good.
This is the big area here. So all we're asking is for someone from the PMO to come down, set up an appointment with Rania here. Monia has been there before. Perhaps you remember when she was campaigning for the release of her husband. How does it make you feel that a fellow Canadian is being held 30 months, he's been ordered to release 6 times on bail and is still behind bars? Hi folks. You both know there's no threat here. It's not enough to wait. We need to set up an appointment. Well, we're calling. So for those of you who are watching this live right now, we're actually inside the Langevin block, named for the architect of Canada's residential school system. And we're trying to get a meeting with the Prime Minister, or just get our date books out so that we can arrange a meeting with the Prime Minister, because Hassan Diab has been held for 30 months in a French jail cell, and he's been ordered released 6 times on bail, and yet the French Court of Appeal keeps turning him down, and he's still behind bars. The case, when it was heard here in Ontario, was found weak, it was found suspect, and in the context of a fair trial, it would be thrown out. And so we're here today with Rania and Monia, who has been in this building before, I believe, in the front, trying to secure justice. Hi, folks. We're trying to get a meeting with a member of the Prime Minister's staff. We were wondering if some of you might be able to help us.
Yes,
hello.
You're supposed to be going to the mailroom to deliver a mail.
Well, we're going to, but before we do that, we've been trying and we keep getting hung up on. And again, you don't need to be nervous.
No. Did they give you the number for the? Did they give you the number for the switchboard?
No one has been polite enough. We've already. They keep hanging up.
I'll get you the number for the switchboard.
No, we don't want the number. We want a representative of the staff.
You have to call it.
We dropped the letter here on May the 5th. So all we want is you know what? A member of the staff can come down.
Sorry, that's not how it works.
Well, it has worked like that in the past, and this is supposed to. It even worked like that under Harper.
So no, it didn't. I've been here.
No, it happened. I have been here when Mr. Martin was here, and it worked like that. They usually send us someone to take,
We're not allowed to take that. They're not allowed.
No, we're not asking you to take anything. All we want to do is to have a member of the staff come down, meet Rania, whose husband has been wrongfully detained.
No, I understand the whole situation.
Great. Well, we understand.
They can't come. They won't. You have to call. They make an appointment. They'll call you.
You have to call to make an appointment for this appointment.
No, then you call. You make an appointment. They'll call you back.
We have tried, and no one has responded. And they've had 2 weeks.
That's beyond me. I don't work for that. I'm a call.
This is, well, it is a locked door, unfortunately. Yes.
So you're all ready to trespass. That's not how the road works. You have to call, make an appointment. Let's jump in here. Investigations.
Hi, how are you? Good.
You want to get this?
Well, before we leave, you were out there, you saw, and again, I appreciate that you're in a difficult position, but we were hung up on twice by the Prime Minister's office. This woman here, Rania, her husband is wrongfully detained 30 months in France. All she wants to do is set up an appointment with someone from the Prime Minister's staff. I know you can't arrange that, but that's why we're inside this building right now. It's not here to disrupt the normal functioning of the government.
They ask you to live that building, you have to live. It's not going to be trespass.
Well, I understand that I might be trespassing, but...
Can you help us to ask them, send us someone, just someone?
I know that you want to deliver, and then they have a place on the other side
yes.
that you can do
Let
this.
someone help her
I can do this, okay?
We have been trying so much.
Yeah, but you're going to have to call. I know that it's not the first time you're doing this. I cannot do anything for you presently. You want to deliver that letter and then address ask.
It's not just about delivering the letter. The letter, we know where to deliver the letter, and we delivered one on May 5th seeking a meeting or an appointment for a meeting. They knew we were coming here today, and they keep hanging up on us. So and I appreciate that you don't work for the Prime Minister's staff here. All we're asking is that staff send somebody down. It's not too much to ask. It has happened before. Monia here.
Nobody's available presently. So de monsieur qui dit qu'il n'y a pas personne de disponible.
Donc, je voudrais quelqu'un qui n'est pas en dehors de moi.
I don't work for the Prime Minister. I work for the Prime Minister's office, right? They have a security call the number. They call you. They make an appointment. I can't make them respond.
Okay. I'm just ask you. Thank you. Thank you
If
very
Donald
much.
Trump were here right now and wanted to meet the Prime Minister, would you say you have to go away and make an appointment?
He would make an appointment ahead of time. You wouldn't.
Well, we tried to make an appointment ahead of time and we were hung up on.
They have to make the appointment.
Okay, sir.
You can deliver your mail. I'd like to bring it over.
Well, you're going to bring me over to deliver the mail, but can you not ask, can you not put in a request to the staff of the Prime Minister?
I cannot.
Well, who can? Can you? Of course, we've already done that 2 weeks ago, and they keep hanging up on us. So what I'm asking is there a member of the staff? You work in this building. You obviously know who the staff are. You probably have a good working relationship with them, so it's good that you have a good job. Can you not get a member of that staff to come down, meet briefly with Rania? If this were an emergency, could you not contact them? So you don't talk to the staff of the Prime Ministers? Ever?
Ever.
So, but you must
I
know
don't work for the Prime Minister.
I work in this building.
Commissioner.
I understand that.
Private institution, right? Private security. And the security of the building. All I care about is the security of the office. Right now,
No,
we're trespassing.
but we're not a threat. We are citizens of this country. This is supposed to be a democracy, and we have asked time and
But this
time
is a
again.
high security federal building.
Yeah, we didn't try to enter.
Yeah.
We are trying
We're just
to
here
talk
now.
to someone like we are doing.
I
We
agree,
would love
but
to
we
have
can do
just
that
someone
anytime.
like you from inside, so that we can tell him, Rania needs to set up an appointment. That's all.
Okay,
That's
sir.
all. We are not trying
Sir.
to go and
Madam, I'm going to ask you to leave now, okay? Last time I asked you, okay? Okay? Please. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, we will go deliver our letters, and I think it's a shame, if you'll just let me say, that no one in this building is willing to come down and set up and make an appointment to meet with the wife of someone who has been detained for 30 months wrongfully in France and ordered released 6 times on bail and is still behind bars. And, we were told it would be different under the Trudeau government. And so it's very disappointing, to say the least. And I know that you're not responsible for Mr. Trudeau, but Mr. Trudeau has to do better than this. When he was in opposition, he said to Mr. Harper, the time for inaction is over. We have to use the full force and power of this office, the Prime Minister's office, the building in which we're standing right now, to free wrongfully detained Canadians. And it's not happening. How long does Rania and her little children have to wait? That's what we're asking. And you can understand why we're very upset today, and we're very concerned, like, they can just continue to ignore us. And that's why it's important to stand here as long as possible, because maybe the message will get up to the Prime Minister's office that way. Because sometimes he thinks as long as people are silent and stay outside the building, everything's going to be fine. Well, maybe it's time for us to step it up a little bit, non-violently, of course. You know that we are...
Does that mean that they ask you to leave the building if not you're going to be trespassed?
we don't want to be threatened because we are not posing any threat.
No, I
You see what
understand
I
that.
mean? We are not threatening you for security. I'm not trying to do anything. So it's not like yeah, but we don't have anything. Like,
You know what? Pat me down. Go for it.
We have just our hands and our words, and we want the Prime Minister. He is a father. He has kids. We want him to really feel what Rania has been feeling all these years. Nobody wants to listen to her. Nobody wants to hear about her cause. Nobody wants to bring her husband here. So this is what we want. You are taking the time. You are taking the time. I feel you are like a human being, but they are not treating us like a human being. They don't even want. You are telling us, take a number, a phone number. They hang up on the phone 2 times. Once on Matthew, once on me. So this is.
That was at the door.
Yeah, they
At
hang
the
up.
door, you're not calling the office. You're calling security. You're calling security.
Do you have a phone number? Let's call that number right now. And if we can get through to somebody and resolve this, you just said you got a phone number. So I'm going to, if you can give me the phone number for the phone, let's call that number right now, and then we can get done, and then we can get on and hopefully have a lunch break. I hope we're not eating. So the number would be 1613. Thank you. I appreciate that, and this will hopefully resolve it. Thank you. I appreciate your patience, you know, you probably get told that in your other life as a doctor as well, that you appreciate your patience. Very poor punning going on here, but you can understand the very hot day here in Ottawa. Rania, how are you feeling right now? I'm sorry, 992
4211.
4211, and we're going to call that number and see if we can get an appointment with the Prime Minister's office. And Rania, I'm going to put it on speakerphone here.
Hello, my name is Rania Tfai. I'm the spouse of Hassan Diab. We are here outside, and we would like to set an appointment with the Prime Minister and his staff in order to discuss Hassan's case. I don't know how much you know, but he has been in prison for over 30 months, and he has not seen his children. He has been ordered released because he's innocent. Okay, the office of who? Okay, thank you.
Yep. They sent us to the opinions line.
Unfortunately, at this time, it is not possible to put you in contact with an official.
Is there a staff section?
That's all I have.
You may be assured that we will give it our utmost attention. De nombreuses personnes téléphonent chaque jour au cabinet du Premier ministre pour l'informer de leur point de vue sur des sujets qui les intéressent ou les intéressent. Malheureusement, il est pour l'instant impossible de vous mettre en contact avec un préposé.
Non.
Veuillez donc laisser un message et soyez assurés que nous vous accorderons toute notre attention. We're going to message after the phone. When you finish, you can hang up or press 1 for more options.
Hello, my name is Rania Tfai, and I'm here with a large number of people and activists, and we would like to meet with Prime Minister Trudeau, as well as his staff, regarding the case of Hassan Diab. He's a Canadian citizen who has been found to be innocent by investigative judges in France, and yet he's still locked up in his cell more than 22 hours a day. He doesn't have any family in France. He's alone. It is very hard on him. It is very hard on him. And we are calling on Prime Minister Trudeau to meet with us in order to be able for him to work and get Hassan out of jail and back here, because, you know, he's innocent. He was found innocent, and it is cruel to continue to subject him and his family to this.